It all starts with a beautiful date, late evening, no people around, just lovers and their feelings for each other. A guy proposes and dreams of living a happy life with a girl until he is old. He has no idea if he could exist in this world without her. She, the meaning of his life. When he looks into her eyes, the world becomes brighter, kinder, all possible problems, bad thoughts, and all that sort of thing disappear. With her, he feels so comfortable, as if this person were destined by fate. He has no idea if there is a love stronger than theirs. Suddenly, the picture changes dramatically. He opens his eyes and realizes that it was just a dream, or rather, his dreams, which very much want to be realized in reality. The thing is that it's not just an ordinary dream. He has it every night. Everything happens exactly as it did the previous times, without a single change. And what's most amazing is that every time the guy sees the dream, and it's like he forgets that he saw it before. And also, that girl he's proposed to over a dozen times is a total stranger to him. He doesn't even know roughly a girl who looks like her. Anyway, even though it's just a dream, it feels like something similar will happen soon in reality. At least it feels that way to him. But for some reason, when a guy starts thinking about it, he immediately loses his mood. He doesn't even want to imagine any relationship in his life. He used to dream about it, but now he hates even that word. Accordingly, every morning he gets aggressive and doesn't understand why he dreams about the girl and not about something else. Something he would really want. Actually, it's all about his principles, so he thinks that even if he is destined to find the one he loves soon, it won't happen. As suddenly, someone knocked on the door. This is very strange. After so much time, the staff could have long ago noticed that at this time, the gentleman is better not to be disturbed. Someone asks if Richard is awake, and he replies in a disgruntled voice that he woke up a few minutes ago, and so he lets whoever is there in. It turns out that this is his personal assistant. The man very often comes to him in the morning and asks the same question. How did you sleep? He is very smiling and a good person, so Richard is never angry with him and allows more than the others. As soon as he entered the room, he naturally inquired how his master had slept. Richard was not very fond of the question, and yet he found the strength to say something on the subject. He replied that he hadn't dreamt anything special today and asked why the deputy had come in so early. The gentleman can see that the man doesn't really want to say it, and yet he has to do it. Does he really want to communicate something that Richard obviously won't be happy to hear? The man smiled and said that it was impossible to hide anything from him. The Lord could only tell when someone was hiding something by the look in his eyes. It turns out that his father wants to see Richard. He asked me to tell him that he has a very important conversation, and it would be good if the boy came as soon as possible and put all his business aside. Nothing new, though. The thing is, every time his father wants to talk about something, he specifically asks for it in a way that makes it seem like it's something important. Most of the time, he just wants to see his son, and there's nothing special about the conversation. But this time, the guy felt that there would be something interesting. He asked me to tell him that he would come as soon as he was cleaned up and ready to go. The time passed without a second thought. The guy got ready in a few minutes and his father didn't have to wait long. He was looking out the window the whole time and didn't think that this time Richard wouldn't ignore him as usual. He knocked at the door and asked if he could come in, but it was only for the sake of propriety, for naturally he was allowed to enter his father's study without permission, but on condition that no one could see it. The man invited him to sit down and said it would be better to get straight to the point, which was very strange, for he did not usually say such things. From the first words, the father says that he would like his son to marry Princess Charlene. He realizes that this is very unexpected and that it is not in his son's plans, but still, he makes it clear that it is very important and must be talked about. Now it's clear what the dream was about and why the guy was so sure that the same thing would happen in reality. It remains to be seen why it was Charlene and why it was so urgent. At first, Richard smiled and even thought it was another joke, but then he realized that it was simple. Her father had chosen her because of the... Charlene was born into a ducal family of healers who are responsible for healing and cleansing the entire empire. Them, on the other hand, a ducal family that fights monsters and is constantly getting injured. Accordingly, the guy has no doubts about the reason why his future wife has been chosen. But there's one problem, a very serious problem, about which you have to think very hard not to make a mistake you might regret for the rest of your life. This girl who is known for making men cry, no one knows how she does it yet, but even those who are crazy about her beauty don't want to mess with her. Even though Richard has not met Princess Charlene personally, but she is too famous person in high society. She is a very beautiful lady, but her character leaves much to be desired. Once, they told her they loved her almost every day, and she smilingly replied that she was looking for someone better. Even when she was just wished a good day or smiled at, she would find a way and ruin that person's life. Literally everyone who got in her way regretted it very much. So people try their best to avoid her even just on the street. And yet, there is one question. As such a girl who just hates men and takes revenge on anyone who even looks in her direction, how could she agree to marry him? Oddly enough, if she is called a person who makes men cry, then he makes girls cry is the exact opposite of what a normal and serious relationship should be about. She and she are known throughout the empire. Instead of a friendly conversation, it's likely that someone will definitely destroy someone. One of them will obviously not survive, or at least get very badly hurt. Richard begins to think about what to say to this, when suddenly his father informs him that everything has been decided. He has no choice, so he will have to marry her, no matter how much he wants to. It's His Majesty's orders, and a guy can't break an engagement just because he wants to or changes his mind. Richard, does he remember what he thinks about relationships and how he feels about girls? Especially one that is very difficult to deal with? The guy was not planned for the next 10 or maybe more years. Besides, a wedding is a personal matter for each person, and no one has the right to decide anything in his place. It's very unfair and wrong of him as a father. In fact, the man himself realizes this and probably isn't thrilled that he has to ask for something like this. Richard smiled, for he thought he had the time and the right to refuse, but unfortunately he was really obliged to marry Lady Charlene. To seem more persuasive, my father said it was no reason to refuse, especially if he broke off the engagement. It would only make things worse. He's giving her sister away to marry the Marquis, and since the man knows full well that his son is against it and will never allow it, it's a very good manipulation, which unfortunately he still has to use against his own son. It turns out that he has only two options and both are not the best. The first, he marries Charlene, and the second, his sister marries a man with whom she will be unhappy for the rest of her life, since the guy is very good to his sister and will never give her offense. Most likely, he will have to choose the first option. The father believes that if the son loves his sister and does not want to ruin her life, then he should put up with and agree to his proposal. As suddenly one of the aides knocked on the door, apologized, and said he had to interrupt their conversation. It turns out that Princess Charlotte has arrived. Judging by the guy's reaction, this is the news he most didn't want to hear at this moment, and he has no idea how to react to it. He tried again to believe it was a joke, but it seems no one is joking around here. He would really have to see her and pretend to be very happy about this meeting. The aide said he escorted her to the gazebo that is located in the garden. The princess is already waiting, so they will have to greet her anyway. The guy was actually very angry. He didn't think his father would keep this information from him until the princess showed up at their house. It's very wrong of him and strange that the man didn't even apologize or explain anything. He saw the hatred in his son's eyes and began to hope that it wasn't him that Richard was angry at. The fact that he was about to see the princess. He has no idea how wrong he is, because now the guy hates each of them. He wants to turn back time, to go somewhere or disappear for a while, just not to see her. She's the person everyone fears and tries to avoid. There is probably no one left in the capital who has not been hurt or at least offended by her. On such a beautiful day, you want to enjoy life, not socialize with a princess from whom you don't know what to expect. She clearly has something planned, and there must be a trap somewhere. Richard doesn't believe this will be a calm and pleasant conversation that people usually have at the beginning of a normal relationship. He expects something horrible, crazy, and out of the ordinary. At first, he began to watch her from afar and thought he should approach as carefully as possible. As soon as he mentally thought of her name, the girl immediately turned around and noticed him, as if she could read his mind. This immediately alerted Richard and made him even more nervous. He looks at her and realizes that now he must either run or gain strength and endure this ordeal. It's strange that when you look at her from the outside, you can't think that she has such a complex character, when in fact, this person is just unbearable. As suddenly, Richard dared to look her straight in the eyes and couldn't believe that she looked exactly like the girl in the dream. He immediately remembered that there she was very gentle, sweet, and kind, which was very different from what she was in reality. Though perhaps with him she will be exactly as he saw her. Because as you know, with each person you can be a completely different personality. With someone she can behave like a villain, and with someone completely the opposite. It's just amazing. They look so much alike that the guy couldn't help but wonder if the girl from the dream had come back to him, though it was probably impossible. In the meantime, since it was time to get acquainted, he did so first and introduced himself as the eldest child in the family, Richard, and then suggested that we sit down somewhere cozy and have a cup of tea to make the meeting as pleasant as possible. It's weird, but for some reason when he starts looking at her, at first she has this cold stare that makes you not want to talk or look in her direction, and then it's gone. And she's a nice lady, like a chameleon. Anyway, he wants to hope that she's not as bad as they say. He wants to get to know her a little better, and of course, try to make a good impression, because no matter what, she's very beautiful. Plus, they ruled out the guy being able to negotiate with her and make everyone happy. For starters, he asked the first question and admitted he wanted to hear it from her in person. He wondered what she thought of the engagement and how the idea had come about in the first place. Had she also been put on the spot and told she had no right to refuse? It was not impossible that this was her suggestion, though it was only conjecture. The princess looked up and in a calm voice said, in a matter-of-factly, she didn't mind. Richard was convinced the second it wasn't true. This man hates men and is only in the business of ruining their lives. He realized that she was hiding something, and with a smile on his face asked the next question, which sounded like this: why she wanted to marry him, and what was special about him that the others didn't have. Because a girl who really loved him would have no problem answering this question. Just seconds later, the princess sets the cup on the table and rises, as if she abruptly wanted to leave and end the date. Richard did not understand what was going on and wanted to hear an explanation. She started to behave very strangely, which is very alarming. And of course, he is very afraid of making her angry, because no one needs unnecessary problems. Turns out it was to get close, look him in the eye and tell him she just wanted to make him kneel down. At this point, the guy froze in one place, as if he was at a loss for words and didn't know what to do now. This girl does not cease to amaze him for a second. Is it really? She thinks in advance that she is in charge in this relationship and allows herself to say such things now. Richard literally blushed. She really was about to drive him crazy, as it turned out. Just one phrase was enough to make a person think whether it was a riddle, a hint, or still, the pure truth that she wasn't even trying to conceal. The princess looks at him as if she doesn't understand what surprised him so much. She sits nicely at first and then says things that are unclear how to take it. Richard took her hand away from his face and asked her to explain the meaning of each word. If it was as he understood it, then this relationship before it began was ending right now. He really wants to believe that she was just joking around and trying to lighten the atmosphere, as suddenly, she says that his reaction is very naive and he's acting like a little puppy dog. It makes her want to tease him even more and make him marvel at every word she says and stop to think what it means. It turns out that every word, movement, and look she gives him is nothing more than a game. She manipulates him and laughs. Eventually, he calmed down, tried to stop paying attention to these tricks, and offered to return to the topic of conversation. He is not going to hide and immediately decided to say that he has always been and will be against the engagement. It was in no way in his plans, respectively. They need to somehow solve this issue. Well, or find a compromise. Up to this point, the boyfriend was sure that she, like him, was against this marriage. Accordingly, one would like to know the real reason why she agreed to it. Without thinking, the girl replies, "It's very simple. She likes him, and she's wanted to marry him for a long time." Just like all the other girls, Richard is frozen in one place again and doesn't know how to react. Absolutely everything she says looks like a joke. At that moment, he also wanted to surprise her and even upset her a little. If she was telling the truth, Richard decided that he would not marry her and would not do so under any circumstances. After that, the girl just looked down, and judging by her reaction, the guy's words didn't even upset her. Because if she really loved him, she would have been very upset and tried to change his mind. She looks at her teacup and thinks about what to say. Meanwhile, the guy gets up and starts to leave without saying goodbye. Anyway, he really has nothing else to talk to her about. She's not a sincere person and doesn't deserve his time and attention. He ends the date with a smile and asks not to bother him again, because next time, he will not be so calm and will react much more aggressively, because he does not like when he is not understood from the first time. The princess is left alone. She didn't have time to say anything, and it's very strange judging by the kind of person she is. She should have thought of all the words beforehand, or at least some kind of second plan. On the way to his office, the guy was even a little upset. He thought that if she was a good girl, he would not hesitate, despite his principles. Of course, agreed and would marry her. She is very beautiful and incredible, but everything spoils her character. No matter how hard he tries to see the good in her, it doesn't work. She ruins her reputation with every word she says. As suddenly he felt a terrible pain, as if someone was destroying him from the inside. It was very good that at that moment the assistant was nearby. She walked over to him and noticed that there was no damage externally, but he was reacting to the pain as if something was very much destroying him from the inside out. The girl doesn't understand what's going on and tries to ask questions to know who to call for help. The guy says everything is fine, although in fact it's not. He's really suffering. And as it turns out, he has a feeling that the team needs his help. She didn't know about it before, so she said that the first unit that went to check the restricted area informed her that they had encountered high-class monsters. The squad he sent to the Forbidden Zone should have been able to easily handle the destruction of the monsters, but something didn't go according to plan. He realized it and decided to leave immediately. Then, every minute is precious to them. The team must be rescued immediately. It turns out that there are really very huge and strong monsters there. When they all went there, they were sure that nothing, especially if not expected, and they will return home in just a few hours, but everything dragged on much longer. Some of the team are very badly hurt, so their main task is to hold on as long as possible, make sure no one else gets hurt, keep a safe distance, and wait for the captain. But it's very difficult. The monster attacks from all sides. He has learned their weaknesses and attacks non-stop. He realizes that humans are less resilient and not as fast as him. So he's feeling very confident and not afraid of anything. Let's just hope someone comes home. As suddenly, Richard appears. He bursts into this contest as a true professional of his work. He came to the rescue, so came with the purpose of destroying the enemy. No other options he's not even considering. Right now it's either the team or the monster that survives. There are no other options. Surprisingly, even in such a situation, he behaves absolutely calmly, as if he knows in advance that everyone will stay alive and that this enemy will not harm anyone. The team begins to marvel at his strength, because next to him, they felt so much better that they wanted to join him. In the meantime, he coped with the monster. It remained only to check other places, so that at the most unexpected moment, did not happen the same situation, and he did not attack them. The commander ordered the second and third squads to check every gorge and reminded them that no time should be spared. The safety of the capital depended on it. After that, he went back to the assistant and asked how many people were hurt. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. But some have serious injuries, and if you don't get them to the hospital in time, it can be very sad. It remains to be seen whether they will be saved if they go back right now. Obviously, there is little time to go back, but it is not known exactly how many. Richard has asked the first aid squad to head out right now with the casualties and do it as fast as they can. The lives of some of the team depend on it, and there are most of them. Everything needs to be done faster than ever before. As suddenly, out of nowhere in the sky appear some petals. The guy raises his head and realizes that it definitely means something, but that's why they appeared at this very moment and how it is connected. It is unclear. At the same second, the captain is called out by one of the team. He starts shouting very loudly as if he has seen something unusual. It turns out that the guy saw a strange girl, so immediately reported it to the commander, because it is not known whether she is an enemy or not. Richard immediately recognized the princess and could not believe his eyes. He was scared to even think that she came as an enemy. The girl explained that after their dialogue she was going to go home, but she heard the conversation about monsters and couldn't think about anything else. So now she was here. No one understands how she can help. As suddenly, the princess explained, she used the power of teleportation to see everything in person and help somehow. Since her abilities only Richard knows, he immediately knew what was what, and in an instant began to trust her. The girl promised to cleanse the body of the bad energy of each of the team. She used the strongest power and said it should work in the next few minutes, so everyone can get home safe and sound. But it happened much faster, literally. In a second, one of them felt much better. He started to come to his senses and felt as if some bad energy had really gone away from him. The guy was filled with something good, pure and pleasant. This is what the princess's power looks like. She can easily heal anyone without even knowing what happened. And she didn't even have to touch the person. She did everything from a distance. Richard is just thrilled. He didn't think it would be this easy, and he doesn't even know how to thank her. Their local healers are skilled users of divine power. But the princess has such immense divine power that she can easily change a situation in seconds and deal with any problem. When suddenly a monster appears out of nowhere, it starts attacking the princess. But she is not confused and reacts in time. It seems as if she was expecting it and was not even surprised. Richard shouted to warn her, but it wasn't necessary. The princess easily focused and sprang into action. It's as if she can slow down time for herself, so she takes her time even in these situations. She destroyed that monster in a second and made sure that it couldn't attack anyone else, much less the casualties. And as soon as another one appeared, she approached it herself and began to fight. Each time she applies different moves and makes it so that the enemy can't figure out how she will defend herself this time around. It's really weird to watch because usually guys put in all the effort, they're very tired, and it takes a lot longer with fear in their eyes. After this, they immediately wanted such a person in the team, although probably if you have it, the team is not needed. Even Richard cannot do that. The whole time the rest of the team is admiring her. The guy is thinking because after this, he will be obliged to marry her and won't be able to behave the same way he did when they first met. After she destroyed the remaining monsters, the girl revealed that she has a hobby that she hasn't told anyone about. She really likes to fight monsters. In her lifetime, she had answered and not such opponents as today. This monster was too insensible to her. After she destroyed some of them with a slap, some of them thought they were hallucinating, because that's just not possible. Everyone started to approach the commander, and it made him even more angry. He already had a lot of thoughts about what to do with her now, and now they. He stares at her non-stop and is sure she did it just to keep him in debt and change his mind about the engagement. Each time the girl surprises him more and more, she also looks at him like she's waiting for something. When suddenly she came up to him and said she wanted to promise him something, Richard tensed up even more and still asked what it meant. The princess wanted to say that she would protect him, so again, she offered to get married and have another talk about it, if of course he was okay with it. The boy's suspicions were true. She had really only come here to try to change his mind once more and propose marriage again. In the end, they never decided anything. They all went home, and as soon as the next day came, he noticed that sleep was gone. Despite such nice weather, nothing good is happening in his life. For example, he is now traveling to the place of his death. That day, his life changed completely. After the princess's help, all his aides started insisting that he accept as her offer and didn't even hesitate to do so. They literally attacked him and started demanding this wedding. It turns out her strategy worked. At least for this wedding, everyone except Richard. Everywhere he goes, he's chased by her fans. They keep coming up to him and telling him he should marry her because she's the best and has saved a lot of people. It's gotten to the point where he's hallucinating. Even while working, he sees her name in documents and doesn't know how to stop it. She's literally everywhere already. So there was a lot of pressure from the knights. They stopped thinking about the job, and as if they were conspiring, they started talking about how good it was. Meanwhile, the guy is riding in the carriage and accidentally thought about the fact that as far as he knows, her divine power should only heal. So the question arises as to how she was able to destroy the monsters, and so professionally. Divine power, it is a special energy that can fight monsters, unlike magic, which anyone can use. Only the descendants of the two great ducal families can harness this power, the family of knights and the family of healers. But how come a girl of 7 healers can not only heal, but also do what knights can do, and much better and faster than any professional? There was no one yet who could use both powers at once, except for one man, a saint who had saved the empire long ago. It was just an ordinary day, nothing to portend trouble, when suddenly, a guy gets a letter proposing a contract marriage. It sounds a lot more interesting than just an engagement because that way, each of them can get some benefit. Of course, not thinking long, he started the meeting at once, hoping she had an interesting proposition to make. Very interesting how it will be this time. The girl, as usual, came first because she is the most interested in marrying him. Richard apologized for keeping her waiting and explained that it wasn't on purpose. This time, he's not as indifferent as last time, so he's trying to make a good impression and not ruin anything. The girl replied that she had just arrived too, and if the guy had come a few minutes earlier, she would have been late. She didn't start with the most important thing and asked how he liked this place. She really likes it here because it has a cozy atmosphere, and you don't want to leave here. The first thing they started looking at was the menu, at which time you can focus and think ahead of time about where to start. If they had not met in a restaurant, for example in a park, they would have had to talk about the contract right away. But this way, they could stall for time and choose food for a long time. Richard liked the sand cake, which he loved very much as a child. The girl made exactly the same order and started to keep silent. The guy couldn't stand it and decided to get to the point after all. The princess said that since that was the case, she would start first. Her participation in the conquest of monsters was a prerequisite, and she had a few other conditions as well. Their marriage will be valid until he receives the title. The princess relinquishes his property and rights as duchess. The guy asked if she was sure about it, because such conditions were too good for him, and on the face of it, there was no gain for her in it. The princess explained that she was being completely serious, and she really didn't need anything from him. After that, he was even more curious to find out what she was up to, because the princess is known to hate men, and Richard was curious as to why she wanted to marry him and lied about her love and feelings. First, she talks about having a purpose. After that, she offers a contract marriage. The contract is not always valid, but with his power, his knights will not be endangered. In the end, the guy agrees to enter into a contract on such terms. He is very interested in what she will do next, because there are no feelings and there must clearly be some benefit here. The girl says she's very happy and really didn't think he would agree so quickly and not suspect her of anything, though she's wrong about that one. Before saying goodbye, he decided to warn her about something, so that there would be no misunderstandings later. The thing is that, as everyone knows, he never wanted to get married, and most likely, during the marriage, he will communicate with other girls. He will not try to make her happy, and even more to remain faithful. Richard asks one last question, whether she will regret that she will marry such a man. And wouldn't she be hurt afterward when she finds out or sees that he went out on a date with another girl, and maybe someday fall in love with someone else even while in a relationship with her? Without hesitation, the girl replied that she had lost a lot of things, so she had forgotten what it was like to be sad or worried about something. She was used to betrayal, so there was nothing in this world that could hurt her anymore. No matter what happens, she will never regret proposing this marriage to him and marrying him, because it was her decision and full realization of what could happen next. Meanwhile, the guy has already signed the document and now it's left for her to do. He can see that the princess looks kind, although it's obvious that she already has a particular attitude and some plans. In fact, the girl is also a bit worried, because when looking at that cold look hidden behind the smile, it makes one a bit wary. Very interesting what we can expect in the near future, because so far everyone is too mysterious. Since the guy agreed to this, it means he's prepared and knows exactly how to act if things don't go according to plan. As expected, the princess has a reason why she needs to stay close to him, because that way she can continue with her plan. At one point, she raises her hand and starts doing something. Richard sees some patterns in front of him and doesn't understand anything. It's very much like magic, which she didn't warn him about. I just hope there's nothing dangerous about it and she doesn't use his signature for her own purposes under the guise of marriage. Because of panic, he grabs her hand and asks her to stop. The princess is surprised and says she will explain everything now. According to her, she just signed a contract with magic and there is nothing wrong with it. Richard gets angry because he thinks she's trying to deceive him anyway and thinks he'll believe it. He demands the truth and warns her that if she tries to deceive him once, she'll regret it very much. The same second, she walks over to him and reminds him very quietly that loving people are never capable of hurting each other. And also, she's sure it won't be days before he falls in love with her and doesn't notice it happening. After that, he became even more nervous after every touch from her. It felt like there was a trap even in that. He was starting to regret believing her, because now he would be afraid of the unknown every day. She seems more and more suspicious, and in fact, he's already having thoughts of breaking this contract before the engagement comes up. In the meantime, the evening has come, and of course everyone has heard the news. The whole staff is just discussing this topic, as these people are just incompatible. The girl hates guys, and the guy hates girls, and soon they will be husband and wife. No one knows yet when the engagement will take place, and in spite of that, all the races started preparing for it as soon as they heard the news. So far, they don't see anything wrong with it, although very soon the princess will live here and become their new mistress. It is very strange that they are happy about it, because such a mistress obviously will not like anyone. She is very demanding and does not forgive mistakes. Moreover, she can punish anyone for nothing. Just because she is in a bad mood, some began to discuss who will become her maid. And at this point, some immediately said no. Unfortunately, not everyone realizes what can happen after the princess starts living in this house. Some have begun to imagine with horror what it will be like, and most likely they have no idea what they will have to face. Except there's one very important thing that even his future wife doesn't know about, and that's that Richard has a girlfriend that he sees a few times a week. And the whole staff knows it. They don't understand how he's going to reconcile this relationship, and they're afraid that if the princess finds out about Catherine, there could be trouble. Luckily, the guy has warned the future wife, and she's ready for it. Although that's still no guarantee that she won't try to get rid of the competitor and hurt her. Today, the guy remembered her and wanted to see her. He didn't say anything about it to anyone and wanted the meeting to remain a secret. It's very strange that a man like him would have a relationship with a girl for a long time. He feels very comfortable with her and likes to come to her when things are very difficult. And it seems like there is just no point in living on. She always rescues him and is happy to help him. She's not the easiest character, like his future wife, but for some reason something keeps him coming back to her. And lately there's been more and more of these meetings. I wonder if he's going to tell her about his upcoming engagement or if he's trying to keep it a secret, which is a waste because rumors of the wedding are flying so fast that she'll find out soon enough, even without him. Suddenly, Catherine wanted to talk seriously, and this time, the topic is very serious. The fact that all this time, she was forced to pretend to be a girl, but in fact, under the female clothes hides his acquaintance, who has to dress up in women's clothes at Richard's request. It's all very strange, and it seems like the fun part begins. This friend was tired of acting by his own rules and constantly covering himself under the guise of his favorite girl. Richard smiled and reminded that on one day he was almost recognized. One day, a friend came to him to help and heal Richard. It was very bad for him at the time, and he had to see him almost every day. But why they had to come up with this idea is unclear, because what's the big deal is that Richard is visited by someone who can help him and does it very well. One day, the assistants knocked on the room. They came in unannounced, and at the same second, for some unknown reason, Richard pretended to be with some girl. He was saved by the fact that his friend had pink hair and looked like a girl from afar. He got angry at the aides on purpose and asked them not to bother him. It was a very strange situation, and it is unclear why he suddenly needed to hide the fact that someone was helping him get treatment. The assistants were shocked. They didn't expect a gentleman who hates girls to suddenly bring a stranger into his room. They tried their best to see her, but it didn't work. The guy was purposely hiding her face so no one would see who she, or rather he, really was. After that, they immediately apologized and said that it would never happen again. They felt very ashamed, and some of them thought that they would be punished for such a thing. In fact, the only thing Richard was thinking at the time was to have his friend fulfill a small request. Unless, of course, he still wanted to be friends with him and started hating him after this situation. Of course, the friend was not thrilled, but since they have been in touch for a long time, he had no other choice, no matter how much he didn't want to. So he agreed. Although he actually wanted to go home immediately and never come to this place again, he never thought that such a situation could happen. And from that day on, he would have to pretend to be a girl, or even worse, wear women's clothes. The thing is, he really needs to hide that he needs treatment, and he got his best friend involved in this scam. He is still very ashamed and has to pretend they are dating. I can see why he comes to see her once a month, and he does it around the same time after work. In fact, he is very grateful to him because it is really easier, and some days he forgets about his problem. This time, the guy decided to cast some kind of healing spell that should work a lot better. Richard realizes that even if he asks not to use divine power, no one will listen to him. A friend acts according to his own methodology and never does as someone else advises. Thanks to his help, the guy is able to stay as strong as before, and if he did nothing, Richard would have lost his place a long time ago. It turns out that it's only because of this friend that Richard has everything he has now, so he appreciates his friend and is grateful for everything he does for him. But there is something that makes the guy suspicious. Even though his friend knows that using the divine power can harm him very much, he still helps, and no matter what, he keeps his promises. He said that he will always use this power, even to his own detriment, just to help those in need. It's impossible to believe that he actually risks his life to keep the others alive. That deserves respect. Richard is really very lucky to have a friend, as he would do anything for him. Meanwhile, the next day has come, After all these problems, the guy is already afraid to wake up in the morning. He is constantly worried and doesn't know what to expect. Today, as usual, the weather is fine, but it doesn't improve his mood one bit. On the contrary, it only irritates him. He begins to dislike even the fact that almost everyone on the staff is happy about it, especially the chief assistant, who has already said more than once what a beautiful day it is. The man doesn't understand what the problem is and what's so wrong with it. At one point, the assistant couldn't help himself and even cried. It had been a long time since the gentleman had yelled at him or complained about something. He felt guilty and couldn't contain his emotions. Because of his bad mood, the guy just ignored the situation, even though he thought it wouldn't hurt to apologize and explain that he was just in a bad mood. Meanwhile, the princess also woke up early in the morning and thought, why not read some book? Especially on the way in the carriage, it is very convenient, so you can noticeably shorten the time. She's picked a good one that fits perfectly with Richard's situation. She needs to find out some advice, so a book called How to Fall in Love with an Unapproachable Man, the most ideal option you can think of when she realized, that's what it takes. It says the following. Step 1, make an unforgettable first impression on your partner. Step 2, show him what you can do, not bad advice, but the girl's already done all the work. Step 3, bring an exciting time behind closed doors. The princess thought that next time they need to be alone in a closed room, the only thing left is to figure out how to do it. She started to think of different options because, first of all, she'd have to lure him into the room and make up some kind of cover story so he wouldn't refuse. Of course, there is another option, but I guess if you do it against his will, it would not be the best option, and she would damage the relationship even more. He might get so angry that he would break the contract. And of course, a person like her decided to take a risk and thought it was a good idea. Very interesting how she would carry it out and make it a reality, because the guy doesn't believe a word she says. It turns out that all this time she was going to him, so soon they will be husband and wife. A girl has the right to come as many times as she likes. She chose the finest carriage, put on a pretty dress, and tried to make herself believe that everything would go according to plan. Richard's father was very excited when he learned that the princess is already on the grounds of the mansion and of course decided to attend in person. Unlike his son, he is very happy about this meeting. The girl gets out of the carriage and by her mere appearance creates much excitement, not only for Richard, but also for the whole staff. They are afraid to imagine how she will behave and treat them when she officially becomes his wife. How suddenly, instead of acting neutral and not reacting to her in any way, just to please her father, he ran up to her, picked her up, and told her how very happy he was to see her. He said he'd been waiting for her and couldn't believe he'd soon be able to call her his wife. Even she was surprised. After he returned to his office, began to ask how people had reacted to this acting, and of course how they felt about the future engagement. The man replied that those who have been working here for a long time are very happy and say they are looking forward to this moment, probably even more than the bride and groom themselves. And yet, on the other hand, many of the young men were from the imperial capital. They were very much concerned about it, for they knew the rumors about the princess of. However, it is not enough to cause any harm. The guy cannot worry about it because no one can interfere and spoil the engagement. Richard was still very curious to know if there were any other rumors he didn't know about. The man replied that there was nothing new, but if he was interested, he could tell about old ones he had heard himself. It turns out many aristocrats don't even want to see that these people can be together. They will definitely come to the ceremony to laugh and make sure something goes wrong. They don't understand how this is possible and assume that it could be a marriage of convenience, or someone was forced to do it, because it can't be any other way. Plus, there are some girls who have been doing everything they can for years to get Richard to notice them and get to know him. So they are very unhappy about this news, and will probably try everything they can to make sure the engagement doesn't happen. On the one hand, he wants the princess to be safe from harm, but on the other hand, she is not a person to worry about. She can take care of herself in case of anything. Judging by how skillfully she handled the monster, dealing with some who don't want her around her fiancé won't be a problem. As a result, since everything was now serious, he asked the assistant to make sure that from now on, there would be strict control that no one would approach the mansion, especially suspicious ones, and he would also make sure that the girl could spend her time without any inconvenience and that no one would approach her. Meanwhile, back to when the girl first arrived, This whole conversation was before they knew she was about to arrive. He started this play on purpose so that everyone would be sure that he loves her very much and will punish anyone who tries to interfere with their happiness, even if he doesn't exist and never will. To other people, they must look like the perfect couple who don't understand why they didn't do it sooner. Absolutely everyone, even those who doubted, must believe that they have some feelings, and this relationship will end very soon. The guy purposely started smiling and asked if his future wife was tired after the long journey, and then offered to rest in her new room, which had just been prepared by his maids. They had cleaned it all day and tried to create a cozy atmosphere as much as they could. In fact, even a personal assistant who knows the truth was very surprised at how good the guy is at this game. It's like he's a real professional actor. At the same time, the princess hasn't said a single word. She understands what this is for and continues to make that it wasn't her, but him, who suggested this music. Richard continues to smile as if his fondest dream has come true, and it seems some people actually believed it. They're actually doing really well. They act like they're not bad for each other, they look good together, and they really do look like husband and wife. Now everything depends only on how long they can hold out. The main thing is not to forget their role and make sure that not a single conversation is not heard by a stranger. Even now when they saw them for a few seconds, their reaction is as if something unbelievable happened. It means that they really didn't believe that they love each other for real, only that they have successfully dispelled all those rumors that have appeared recently. They managed to do it in just a few minutes. As soon as they entered the room, they immediately relaxed and exhaled. It turns out the guy hadn't been breathing the whole time, and the girl was purposely doing that look so that no one would even look in her direction. After that, they decided to have a serious talk, because they had accumulated so much that they couldn't stand it anymore. First, they made sure that no one was eavesdropping outside the room, and even looked out the windows just in case. And that's not all. The guy had cast some kind of soundproofing spell, and now it's safe to start a conversation. The princess did not think it would be so serious, for she was ready to talk even without all this preparation. Afterwards, she noticed that they were standing too far apart. She reminded him that she didn't bite and he could come closer, but Richard said he was fine with that distance. At first, the princess tried to calm down and then decided to come closer but did not understand why he kept his distance. After all, soon they would be husband and wife and would not be strangers. As soon as she took the first step, he moved farther away, and it happened about 3 times. It means the guy is purposely trying to stay away like he knows something. The princess tries to approach anyway, and he won't let her do it. Eventually, she agrees to talk under those conditions and even laughed a little. She took it like a puppy that was scared. The guy thanked for understanding and very quietly called her Miss Evil. Did he also have some kind of plan, or rather a strategy and rules for dealing with this person that he hadn't even thought about before? There's a so-called invisible competition between them, but what it is, we don't know yet. From the girl's side, he looks too annoying. The only good thing about him, in her opinion, is his cute face that you can stare at forever. In the end, the princess didn't hold back and admitted that it was very disgusting. I really wonder what she means and what exactly she didn't like. The distance or the meeting near the carriage. She asked if that was it. He plans to keep it up. Without hesitation, the evening replied that it was exactly like that. It annoys him when people spread false rumors about the relationship that are based on nothing but assumptions. After that, they started to argue about what was best and how they should behave when they had to appear at some events where all the attention of the guests would be on them. Richard suggested that if they were to be invited to an event, it would be better to accept only those that they really want to attend, to be less likely to appear in social circles together. In his opinion, they should eliminate any conversations with strangers, especially those who want to know how he is doing in the relationship. As we know, people find out about it only to spread rumors, and this they should not allow them in any way. You need to communicate only with those whom they can trust, and since such people are very few, it is better not to appear at all where there are many people, as it will be very difficult to ignore and avoid conversations. The girl thought that the reason he was treating her like a loved one while a lot of people were looking at them was probably to protect her, and in general, this relationship from horrible rumors. For him, it was a regular duty, but these actions had no special significance for her personally. The girl had been satisfied with everything before. Nevertheless, she was the only one, then expects unprecedented kindness. She noticed that she had even forgotten about her plan of the guy's surprises with his serious attitude to marriage. It's as if she starts to fall in love with him, although she didn't plan and probably will try to think less about it on purpose, because she is used to hating men and doesn't want to get away from her image. Right after that, she decided to ask the question she'd been afraid to say all this time. She was very curious about what would happen in their case after the wedding, because usually people spend time together, and she was very curious to know how it would be for them. The guy immediately realized what she was hinting at and was very confused. He had never once thought about it, because she was not the kind of girl he could have feelings for. He immediately wanted to vanish into thin air and make sure that this conversation didn't happen. But since it was too late, he would have to think of something and make sure that the princess wasn't upset. As suddenly, one of the assistants enters the room. He didn't warn and immediately opened the door. After that, the guy remembers that he promised never to do that again and got a little embarrassed. In fact, this time he was very lucky, for instead of starting, Richard thought that perhaps the assistant could help him. He began to hope for it very much and showed with all his appearance that he wanted to leave here with him. At that moment, two others came up. They froze in one place because they were sure that there would be a lot of shouting. Besides, it was not often that they could see such a picture. It turned out that the spell did not work. In a second, they apologized and closed the door at once. The captain began to scream, for he thought they would take him with them and not leave him in such a situation. The princess saw that he was beginning to worry, so she wondered if he had forgotten that he himself had called her into this room and offered to talk to her. It turns out that after the helpers closed the door behind them, they didn't go anywhere but stayed to eavesdrop. They are very interested to find out what Richard and his future wife are talking about and why he got so angry when they left. Overhearing the princess's words, they opened the door again and decided to give a little advice, namely, that if a man invited a girl to his house, he should take responsibility and not be afraid to answer any questions. Then they closed the door again and pretended that nothing had happened. Richard felt as awkward as possible, for not only was he embarrassed to talk about it, but the assistants had witnessed the conversation as well. In the meantime, he somehow miraculously managed to go about his business, or rather, to make it up. Allegedly, they suddenly appeared. In fact, the guy went to another office, called his assistants, and began to think how to answer this question next time. According to one of them, he shouldn't worry at all, as it's most likely just a test, and she's interested to see if he's planning something like this in the relationship, or if it's a taboo subject for him. Of course, he is very grateful for all this advice, but still, I want to understand why she is suddenly interested in this, because the engagement is not soon, and they have so many other problems. At one point, he looked up and very quietly said the following phrase, "We're not in the relationship you think we are." He doesn't want to be like his parents. When the guy gets married, he wants to build the happiest family in the world. Had been times when he had really thought so and dreamed of it more than anything else in the world. That was until as a child, he did not know his destiny on that day, a person who has a keeper's seal. He will not be able to live so long that there is an opportunity to create a family, and even more so, to waste another person's time on it. He will have a very short life, so there's no point in even dreaming about it. After their ancestors founded the empire, monsters and other creatures suddenly began to appear. The entire continent plunged into chaos, and when everyone was in despair, a great saint and a guardian knight appeared. These two erected a protective barrier that drove away the monsters and protected the people. The Charlene family, which is responsible for cleansing and healing, as well as the family that provides protection and subjugation of monsters. Conquering monsters has always been a dangerous endeavor. From the team's point of view, if you princess could only help with her divine power, things would be much easier. There would be less deaths and casualties. And now finally, their dream has come true. She came up with the idea herself and decided that she would help the team. It's her new mission that recently came up on the contract. Since this has been her hobby in the past, the girl is very excited and eager to face her new enemy. Aside from taking down monsters, her main mission is to heal the team if need be. Every time the guy warns her, this is not entertainment, but a very responsible mission. Many people's lives depend on it, and if they don't take their job seriously, it will be on their conscience. All these words seemed very boring for the team because everyone already knows that this is a very responsible mission. Besides, it was not necessary to remind about it because there are only professionals here. Now everyone is much calmer because the team has a girl who can heal anyone, even in the most dangerous and desperate situation. After that, they started talking among themselves and planning what they would do after work. Today, they really wanted to relax. For example, to go to some place and have fun. It's been a long time since they've gone anywhere together and rewarded themselves for a job well done. Plus, today is the perfect occasion to renew the tradition. In the meantime, Richard suggested that we should get on our way. But before we did, he asked us to check that everyone had brought everything they needed so that we wouldn't have a situation like last time. Along the way, the girls started asking a lot of questions to at least roughly understand when they could expect a monster trap. The guy admitted that they couldn't always know where the so-called surprise was waiting for them. So we need to be as attentive as possible and not be distracted by such conversations. It distracts not only the interlocutor, but also the whole team. The princess understood everything and promised that she would not break discipline. She began to look around carefully because the monster could be just a few meters away. You should always notice it in time, because sometimes it happened that the most attentive member of the team saved others only because he looked around and did not get distracted. At first, it seems like there is nothing dangerous about it. But usually, when the monster shows up, it creates an atmosphere that is very pressurizing and makes one feel less strong and confident than one just felt. At this point, Richard suddenly proposed an idea. He wants to start cooperating and, in case of anything, attack the monster at the same time. Supposedly, it would be much more efficient that way. The girl could hardly contain her laughter because it was clear to her that he felt safer and more confident around her. In fact, there was nothing wrong with that. It was just that she felt stronger in this situation. Even though it's not the guy's fault he has to trust her more than himself, he's decided that because the princess was born with this ability, it doesn't mean he's a bad knight or weaker than her. It's a little unfair, but we'll have to live with it. Meanwhile, it's evening. Everyone is tired of going out and looking for monsters that should have appeared much sooner. Some people thought that that time, the princess had destroyed everyone and they wouldn't have to work today. The girl felt like one of the best again, and didn't even notice how some of the team started to envy her. Some guys can't stand the fact that a girl who's never been trained for this can handle monsters so easily and do so much better than the rest of the team. So they didn't speak to each other at all for a while. The princess felt guilty and thought that maybe she didn't need to do that. She hates to see that some people look at her like they want her off the team. Richard sees it too, but so far he has no idea what to do about it. Besides, when they are really in danger, everyone will forget about who is stronger and who is not. On the contrary, they will thank the princess for going along with them like they did last time. At some point, she decided to explain that it wasn't her fault that she had this ability, and also, in case anyone forgot, she only joined this team to make sure everyone got home safe and sound. So if anyone was against her participation, she could leave right now and everyone would be satisfied. Richard smiled as he realizes that no one has the guts to send her home. Everyone wants her help and is afraid to go without her. She's on the team. It's a guarantee that everyone stays alive. It's very strange that she's suddenly being discussed and envied. Although if it wasn't for her, some people wouldn't be alive anymore. At some point, the commander suddenly asked some of the team to go to the support squad and asked for someone to clean each of them from bad energy. The girl heard this, and of course could not keep silent. She immediately offered her help, because she does not understand why to call someone if it can be done by her, and much faster and better than any other specialist. At first the guy refused, but she insisted and said that no one needed to be separated. If someone went somewhere, there was no telling what might happen. They really should stick together, because that way everyone would be safe and could help each other in case of an emergency. As soon as he refused again, she grabbed him by his clothes and told him that no one was going anywhere or else. She would stop being part of the team and go home. It was a bit of manipulation, but all just to make everyone feel better. She really fears for each of them and wants everyone to be safe. She doesn't understand if it's so hard to agree to that condition. Richard continues to stand his ground and says that the girl is tired, so she doesn't need to exert herself. Because there are people who know how to do that. The princess started to get nervous and warned that she is speaking for the last time. There's no need to ask anyone to do it. In the end, he agrees and says that if she insists so much, he won't refuse. Which sounded very strange, because why couldn't he have agreed the first time she suggested it? In the meantime, they had already returned home, and instead of just saying goodbye as usual and going to their rooms, the girl offered to come over to his place and suddenly started doing what she'd hinted at last time. She realizes that the guy will not agree immediately and will resist. But despite this, she continues to take the initiative. At some point, he suggested that we go to our rooms and said he would explain everything. Next time, after that, he called his friend and told him about the situation. He was very interested in his opinion because he had never had it before. He was so nervous that he felt like a little boy. Friend first laughed and then asked what was the big deal about confessing to his future wife that he hadn't been in a relationship before. Accordingly, he couldn't be as confident about the matter as she was. Richard regretted asking him for help at first, but at some point he realized that it would be easier to talk to her and tell her than to make up excuses and kick her out of the room. So he'll just ruin the relationship and make her think he's having thoughts of terminating the contract. So the friend is right. In the end, he made the decision that as much as he didn't want to, they would have to talk about it and agree on when it would happen and if it would happen at all.